Welcome to our deep dive into the early Upanishads.
Oh, excellent.
You've sent us some really fascinating source material.
Yeah.
And I'm already intrigued by the depth you're looking for.
Uh-huh.
We're talking original texts and commentaries here.
Yeah, we're going deep.
Instead of getting lost in academic debates, though,
Right.
we're going to try to uncover the core wisdom of these ancient texts
Absolutely.
and see how they relate to your life today.
That's the goal, make it relevant.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that struck me right away was this shift in Indian thought that the Upanishads represent.
It is a fascinating turning point, yeah.
You know, moving away from the meticulous rituals of the earlier Vedas and really delving into these deeper questions about existence,
Yeah. The
consciousness.
self.
Yeah.
Big questions.
Yeah.
Timeless questions.
Exactly.
And those questions, they still resonate with us centuries later.
They do. It's incredible.
It's amazing how relevant they are.
Absolutely. And the cosmology is mind-blowing.
Oh, yeah.
7 layers of heaven, a world of the fathers.
It's wild.
It's like this blend of mythology and philosophy.
It's a rich tapestry of ideas.
It really is.
Yeah.
And there's this emphasis on direct experience,
That's key.
not just book learning, which I find really appealing.
Yes, it's about embodying wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
not just memorizing scriptures.
Right. It's about putting it into practice.
Exactly.
And to really understand these texts,
Yeah.
we need to grasp their historical context.
Of course, context is everything.
Right. They emerged during a time of great change in India,
Absolutely. A time of upheaval and transformation.
with the rise of kingness.
Yes, the political landscape was shifting.
And the evolving role of kings in religious life.
Power dynamics were changing, definitely.
Okay, so let's unpack that historical framework a bit.
Okay, sounds good.
You mentioned the Upanishads are part of a larger Vedic tradition,
They are. It's like a continuous conversation spanning centuries.
building upon the Samhitas and Brahmanas.
Right. Think of it as chapters in the same book.
Okay, so like they're all connected.
Exactly. The Samhitas laid the foundation with hymns and mantras.
Oh, okay.
The Brahmanas focused on ritual practices.
Uh-huh.
And then the Upanishads emerged, adding this layer of philosophical inquiry.
It's fascinating how these ideas evolved over time.
This is a fascinating progression, yeah.
And in your notes, you pointed out that geography plays a surprising role.
Oh, it's crucial, yeah.
Like where these texts originated actually influences their content.
Location, location, location.
I find that so fascinating.
It's a relatively new area of scholarship, but it's providing amazing insights.
So what have we learned from this geographical perspective?
Well, we're discovering that different regions of northern India
Okay.
became hubs for specific schools of thought.
So different regions had different philosophical leanings.
Exactly, almost like philosophical rivalries based on location.
I love that.
Yeah, it makes it so much more dynamic.
So it's not just a single monolithic tradition.
No, not at all.
It's a network of thinkers engaging in debate and dialogue across regions.
A real intellectual melting pot.
I have Michael Witzel's research here, and he's actually mapped this out.
He has, yeah, figure 2 in his work.
In Figure 2,
Yeah.
it shows that the early Upanishads
Mhm.
were all composed in a concentrated area of northern India.
From the Indus Valley to the Ganges.
So it's a specific region.
Yeah, a fertile ground for these ideas to emerge.
And that map really helps us understand
It does.
why certain themes might be emphasized in one Upanishad versus another.
Precisely. For instance, the Prayaraka Upanishad,
Uh-huh.
likely composed in the Kurupankala region, delves deeply into the nature of the self.
Okay.
While the Chandogya, potentially from Vidya,
Mm-hmm.
explores the interconnectedness of all things.
So the location really influenced their focus?
It's all connected. The geography, the people, the ideas.
It's fascinating.
It is, isn't it?
Okay, so let's dive into that universe model a bit.
All right.
The 7 spheres you mentioned earlier.
Ah, yes, the 7 spheres.
What exactly are these spheres and what do they represent?
So think of it as an expansion of the earlier Vedic cosmology.
Okay.
The Upanishads still acknowledge the earth, the atmosphere, the heavens,
Mm-hmm.
but they add 4 more layers, creating a model of 7 spheres.
So they're building on existing ideas.
Exactly. It's like they're saying there's more to reality than meets the eye.
And the farthest realm is called Sakyaloka,
The world of truth.
the world of truth, which sounds incredibly profound.
It is. It represents the realm of pure truth and unconditioned being.
So is this like the ultimate reality, the highest level of existence?
You could say that, yes.
Oh, okay.
It's a state of existence beyond our ordinary perception.
And is this something that's accessible to us?
The Upanishads suggest that it is through self-realization.
So it's a potential that's within us.
Yes, the potential to transcend our limitations.
Alongside the seven spheres, the Upanishads present a three-part division of the universe.
Right, the world of humans, the world of the fathers, and the world of the gods.
So is this where their ideas about the afterlife come in?
Yes. This model is directly related to the concepts of karma and rebirth.
Okay, so how does that work?
In earlier Vedic thought, the world of the fathers was the primary destination after death.
So everyone went to the same place.
Pretty much, yeah.
But the Upanishads introduce a new possibility.
They do?
The potential to achieve immortality and escape the cycle of rebirth altogether.
Exactly, a path to break free from the cycle of birth and death.
So it's not just everyone heading to the same place after death.
Not necessarily, no.
There's a path to something more permanent.
Yes, to a state of liberation.
And this is where the concept of the self, or Ātman, becomes crucial.
Absolutely. The Ātman is key to understanding this path.
So what exactly is the Ātman, according to the Upanishads?
Well, it's not just your individual personality or ego.
Okay, so it's something deeper.
Much deeper, they link the Ātman to breath, to the elements, even to the cosmos itself.
So it's this interconnected essence that permeates everything.
Exactly. The Ātman is the thread that connects us all.
Speaking of breath, I noticed that the Upanishads seem really, obsessed with it.
Oh, yeah. Breath is fundamental to their teachings.
Prana, apana, udana.
A whole new vocabulary.
It is.
Yeah, and it's fascinating.
Why is breath so central to their teachings?
Well, breath, or prana, is seen as the vital force that animates life itself.
Okay.
So much so that some passages even equate breath with the Ātman.
Wow, so it's not just about breathing to stay alive.
No, it's about the energy that flows through us, the life force that connects us to the universe.
I can see how that connects to their idea of the Ātman.
Exactly. It's all interconnected.
And it reminds me of another theme that keeps popping up. What's that? The interconnectedness of all things.
Ah, yes. A central theme in the Upanishads.
I noticed all these metaphors, like honey representing the essence of beings and food as the foundation of life.
Right. The Upanishads are rich in symbolism and metaphor.
How do these metaphors tie into the bigger picture?
They point towards this profound understanding of the universe as a unified whole.
Everything is connected.
Exactly. Everything is interconnected and interdependent.
And this connection goes beyond just our physical bodies.
Oh, absolutely.
The Upanishads are adamant that the self isn't confined to our flesh and bones.
They are. They use vivid imagery to describe this concept.
Like what?
For instance, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad talks about the self slipping out of the body during deep sleep.
Really? So even when we're asleep, a part of us is still awake and experiencing something?
Yes, they suggest that even in sleep, a part of us remains active, experiencing a different reality.
Wow, that's fascinating.
The Upanishads challenge our conventional understanding of reality and the self.
They really do.
Yeah.
They invite us to explore the deeper dimensions of our being.
To go beyond the surface, to delve into the mysteries of consciousness.
And they do this through some incredibly engaging dialogue and debate.
Oh yes, the Upanishads are full of lively conversations.
These sages weren't just passively meditating in caves.
Not at all. They were actively challenging each other's ideas.
Right. It's like they're saying, don't just accept things blindly.
Question, explore, and discover the truth for yourself.
Exactly.
That's what makes them so relatable, even today.
It is. It's not just about accepting dogma. It's about engaging in the process of inquiry.
Exactly, of questioning and exploring the nature of reality and the self.
And it's not just about intellectual debate.
No, the Upanishads emphasize the importance of direct experience.
Right, moving beyond intellectual understanding to a felt sense of truth.
Exactly. It's about embodying the wisdom, testing it, experiencing it for yourself.
Can you give us an example of how the Upanishads encourage this move from intellectual understanding to direct experience?
Sure, take the story of Svetiketu and the salt dissolving in water.
Oh, yes, that story really stood out to me.
It's a classic.
It's from the Chandogya Upanishad, right?
Yes, it is.
Where the sage Uddalaka is teaching his son about Brahman, the ultimate reality, by showing him how salt disappears when dissolved in water.
Exactly. Uddalaka tells Svetiketu to taste the water at different points. And even though he can no longer see the salt, the taste remains.
It's a brilliant analogy for Brahman.
It is the ultimate reality that pervades everything.
Even though we can't see it with our physical eyes.
Precisely. It's a call to move beyond intellectual understanding to direct experience.
It's like saying Brahman is everywhere, like the salt dissolved in the water.
But you can't grasp it conceptually. You have to experience it directly.
Exactly.
And this emphasis on direct experience is woven throughout the Upanishads.
It's about embodying the wisdom, not just memorizing verses.
You got it.
Okay, so how do the Upanishads guide us on this path of direct experience?
Well, they offer a variety of techniques,
Like what?
including meditation, self-inquiry, and the cultivation of certain virtues.
Okay, that sounds like a lot to unpack.
It is. It's a rich and multifaceted path.
But before we delve into those,
Yeah?
I think it's important to understand another key concept that permeates the Upanishads,
Which is,
the concept of Brahman.
yes, Brahman, the ultimate reality.
You mentioned it earlier as the ground of all being.
It's the source of all existence, the unifying principle that connects everything.
It's a concept that can be difficult to grasp.
It is. It's beyond the reach of language and thought.
So how do the Upanishads approach this elusive concept?
They often describe Brahman through metaphor and analogy.
Okay, so they use imagery to help us understand.
Exactly, because it's ultimately beyond the grasp of words.
So, how do they use metaphor and analogy to point us towards the truth of Brahman?
One common analogy they use is that of the ocean.
Okay.
Imagine the vastness of the ocean, the boundless expanse of water.
Mm-hmm.
Brahman is like the infinite eternal source from which everything arises.
And to which everything returns.
Exactly.
So it's like saying we are all individual waves on the surface of this vast ocean of Brahman.
Precisely. But we often forget that we are part of something much greater.
We get caught up in the waves of our individual lives.
Yes, our thoughts, emotions, all the ups and downs.
And we lose sight of the vast ocean that sustains us.
We forget our true nature.
The Upanishads remind us that we are not separate from Brahman.
They do. They emphasize our interconnectedness with the ultimate reality.
That we are, in essence, one with the infinite.
That's the ultimate truth they're pointing towards.
That's a powerful image.
It is, isn't it?
And it reminds me of another analogy. They use the analogy of space.
Yes, another powerful metaphor.
They describe Brahman as being like space.
The boundless container that holds everything, yet is itself unaffected by anything?
It's everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Precisely. It's the ground of being, the backdrop against which all phenomena arise and pass away.
So it's like saying Brahman is the background, the silent witness to all phenomena.
Yes, it's the unchanging reality that underlies the ever-changing world of appearances.
But it's also the very ground of our being, the source of our existence.
Exactly. It's both transcendent and immanent.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get a sense of how the Upanishads approach this concept of Brahman.
It's a journey, for sure, but the Upanishads provide a map and a compass.
They use these metaphors and analogies to awaken our intuitive understanding of Brahman.
To help us grasp something that's ultimately beyond the reach of our minds.
And that's what makes them so fascinating.
They invite us to a direct experience of the truth.
They challenge our conventional ways of thinking and perceiving.
And they offer a path to liberation, to freedom from suffering.
This is incredible stuff.
It is. The Upanishads are a treasure trove of wisdom.
Okay, so we've explored this concept of Brahman, this ultimate reality that permeates everything.
Yeah, we've laid the groundwork.
But how do the Upanishads guide us towards the experience of this reality?
That's the key question.
What kind of practices or techniques do they offer?
They offer a variety of paths and practices, but they all emphasize the importance of direct experience.
Okay, so it's not just about intellectually understanding the concept of Brahman.
No, it's about actually experiencing it, feeling it as a lived reality.
And how do we do that?
Well, they suggest that we can approach Brahman through contemplation, through meditation, through a direct felt sense of unity and oneness.
So it's about realizing that we're not separate individuals, but part of something much greater than ourselves.
Exactly. It's about remembering our true nature as Brahman, the infinite, eternal reality that pervades everything.
Beautifully said.
And the Upanishads offer a path, a way to remember our true nature, to awaken to the reality of our being.
So what does this path look like?
It's a multifaceted path involving ethical living, meditation, self-inquiry, and surrender to the divine.
Okay, that sounds like a lot to unpack.
It is, but it's a journey worth taking.
Let's start with ethical living.
All right.
What do the Upanishads say about how we should live our lives?
They emphasize the importance of cultivating certain virtues.
So what are the qualities of someone who is aligned with Brahman?
They describe a person who embodies these virtues as a sthitaprajna.
A sthitaprajna.
Yes, a person of steady wisdom.
So someone who is rooted in the self, unmoved by the fluctuations of the external world.
Exactly. They have found their inner peace and aren't easily swayed by the ups and downs of life.
They act with skill and compassion, but aren't attached to the outcome.
Precisely. They've cultivated equanimity, a sense of detachment from the fruits of their actions.
That reminds me of the Bhagavad Gita's teaching of action without attachment.
It's a similar concept, yes.
You do your best, but don't get caught up in the results.
Exactly. Focus on the action, not the outcome.
And the Upanishads make it clear that this equanimity isn't passive.
No, it's an active engagement with the world.
So asthita prajna is fully present in each moment.
Yes, but they are not bound by it.
They are constantly striving to refine their actions.
To purify their thoughts.
And to live in accordance with the highest truth.
It's a lifelong process of self-cultivation.
Okay, so ethical living is a key part of the path.
It's the foundation, the ground from which all other practices grow.
What about meditation?
Meditation is central to their teachings.
Okay, so how does meditation work in the Upanishadic context?
It's about cultivating inner stillness, quieting the mind, and accessing deeper levels of awareness.
So it's not just about emptying your mind.
No, the Upanishads emphasize the importance of meditating on specific concepts or mantras.
Like the syllable Om.
Yes, Om is a powerful mantra, considered the primordial sound.
The vibration that underlies all creation.
Exactly. Chanting it or meditating on its meaning is said to connect us to the source of all being.
To quiet the mind and bring us into harmony with the universe.
Precisely.
And there are other techniques for directing the flow of prana, right?
Yes, like pranayama.
Pranayama, which involves regulating the breath through specific patterns and rhythms.
Exactly. Pranayama helps to purify the energy channels.
And promote physical and mental well-being.
It's like yoga for the breath.
Right. And it's not just about individual well-being.
No, these practices connect us to the cosmic web of life, to the interconnectedness of all things.
So it's about realizing that we're not separate individuals, but part of something much greater than ourselves.
That's the essence of the Upanishadic teachings.
Wow, this is really fascinating stuff.
It is, isn't it? The Upanishads offer a profound and practical path to self-realization.
They invite us to explore the depths of our being and to connect with the ultimate reality.
And they remind us that this journey is not about escaping the world, but about transforming our experience of it.
So we can live with greater wisdom, compassion, and peace.
Exactly. That's the goal, to awaken to our true nature and to live in harmony with the universe.
It's a journey worth taking, for sure.
Absolutely. And the Upanishads provide a map and a guide for those who are ready to embark on it.
Well, I'm definitely feeling inspired to delve deeper into these teachings.
I'm glad to hear that. There's so much to discover.
And I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same way.
I hope so. The Upanishads have a lot to offer.
Okay, so we've laid some groundwork, explored some key concepts.
Yeah, we've just scratched the surface.
But there's so much more to uncover.
There is. The Upanishads are full of surprises.
I'm eager to continue this exploration.
Me too. Let's dive in.
But before we move on, I want to make sure we're connecting these profound concepts to your life and experiences.
Sounds good.
What stands out to you from our discussion so far?
That's a great question. Let me think for a second. Well, it's been a rich conversation so far, hasn't it?
It really has. So much to think about.
The Upanishads offer so much to contemplate.
They really do.
Yeah.
I'm particularly struck by this idea of the self. Not just our personality, but something deeper, connected to breath, the elements, even the cosmos.
Yeah. It's not the ego. It's something much greater.
It is a bit mind-boggling, to be honest.
It is. They grapple with the very nature of the self.
And they do it in such profound and poetic ways.
They even describe the self through negation.
Through negation.
But the Ātman is not.
Oh, interesting. Can you give me an example?
Sure. For instance, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, it is not gross, not subtle, not short, not long, not red, not fluid. It's like they're saying you can't pin down the Ātman with physical descriptions or sensory experiences.
So it's beyond all that.
It is. It transcends our limited understanding.
So it's about stripping away all those external layers to reveal the core essence of who we truly are.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a process of uncovering, of peeling back the layers.
And they also describe the Ātman through its qualities, right?
They do. Its attributes.
Like how?
The Taittiriya Upanishad presents this model of the self.
Okay.
As consisting of 5 sheaths or layers.
I remember reading about those.
Each more subtle than the previous one.
Yeah, I was curious about those 5 sheaths.
Let's unpack them.
Yeah.
The first one, the food sheath, seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah. That's our physical body, right?
Right. The most obvious, the grossest manifestation of the self.
Okay.
It's the foundation, but it's not the whole story.
Right. So there's more to us than just our physical bodies.
Much more.
So what's the next layer?
The vital breath sheath. The prana.
Okay, prana, the vital breath.
This is where all those different types of breath we talked about earlier come in.
Prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana.
Exactly. They're all part of this vital force that animates and sustains the physical body,
So it's not just about breathing, it's about the energy that flows through us.
the life force that keeps us going.
Yeah. And it's fascinating that the Upanishads identify 5 distinct types of breath within this vital sheath.
It shows their deep understanding of the body and its relationship to the self.
Each type of breath has its own specific functions and qualities.
Prana, for example, governs the outward breath,
Okay.
while apana governs the downward and inward flow of energy.
It's like they're saying, pay attention to your breath.
Right.
It's not just air, it's a window into your true self.
It's a reflection of our inner state.
So we have the food sheath, the vital breath sheath. What comes next?
The mental sheath.
Okay, the mental sheath. So that's our thoughts and emotions?
It encompasses all our mental activity. Thoughts, emotions, perception.
All the things that make us human.
Exactly. But the Upanishads make a crucial distinction here.
What's that?
They say the mind, while powerful, is an instrument, not the true knower.
So it's like the mind is a tool we use, but it's not the totality of who we are.
We're something more than our thoughts and feelings.
Okay, I like that distinction.
Yeah, it's important.
So what's the next sheath?
The intellectual sheath.
The intellectual sheath.
This is where our higher reasoning and understanding reside.
So this is where all our philosophical pondering and deep thinking happens.
Exactly. The realm of wisdom, discrimination, and the ability to distinguish between the real and the unreal.
It's the part of us that seeks knowledge.
And strives for liberation.
Okay, so we have the physical body, the vital breath, the mind, the intellect. And that brings us to the 5th and final sheath.
The bliss sheath.
The bliss sheath. I'm intrigued by this one.
It's the most subtle, the most elusive layer of the self.
What exactly is the bliss sheath?
It's the realm of pure consciousness, unconditioned joy, a state of oneness with Brahman.
Okay, I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
It's the ultimate state of being where all boundaries dissolve.
And you experience pure bliss.
That's the goal, the ultimate aim of life, according to the Upanishads.
To realize our true nature as this blissful, infinite self.
Exactly, to transcend the limitations of the ego and merge with the ultimate reality.
But how do we even begin to access this bliss sheath?
It seems so far beyond our everyday experience.
Right, it does.
Well, the Upanishads offer guidance, of course.
What do they suggest?
They emphasize self-knowledge, meditation, and detachment from the material world.
So it's not a quick fix.
No, it's a journey of inner transformation.
It sounds like it requires a shift in perspective, a letting go of our attachment to the material world.
And a turning inward towards our true nature.
Okay, I can see how that aligns with our overall teachings.
It's all interconnected.
I love that the Upanishads present these teachings in such a vivid and engaging way.
They do. They're master storytellers.
It's not just abstract philosophy.
No, they use stories, metaphors, and dialogues to bring these ideas to life.
It's like we're eavesdropping on ancient wisdom.
Listening in on these conversations between sages and students.
Exactly.
You remember that story from the Chandogya Upanishad?
Which one?
Where those students are arguing about which deity is supreme.
Oh, yeah, and they go to Indra for the answer.
And Indra, being the trickster god that he is, doesn't give them a straight answer.
He sends them on a wild goose chase, literally.
Right. And they end up realizing that the true self is not to be found in external deities or rituals.
Within their own hearts.
Exactly. It's a cosmic joke with a profound punchline.
The answer you're seeking is already within you.
Precisely. It's a reminder that the journey of self-discovery is not about acquiring knowledge from the outside.
But about uncovering the wisdom that already resides within us.
That's the essence of the Upanishadic teachings.
So what are some specific techniques the Upanishads recommend for this inner exploration?
One of the most fundamental practices is meditation.
Meditation, okay.
But it's not just about sitting quietly and emptying your mind.
Right. They emphasize meditating on specific concepts or mantras.
Exactly.
Like the syllable OM.
Yes. Chanting OM, or meditating on its meaning, is said to help quiet the mind and connect us to the source of all being.
And there are also those techniques for directing the flow of prana.
Yes, practices like pranayama.
Pranayama, which involve regulating the breath through specific patterns and rhythms.
Precisely. Pranayama is like yoga for the breath.
Right.
And the Upanishads suggest that these techniques purify the energy channels.
And promote physical and mental well-being.
It's not just about breathing. It's about aligning our energy with the cosmic flow of life.
So it's about recognizing that we're not separate individuals, but part of something much greater than ourselves.
That's the key insight.
That realization, that shift in perspective, is what ultimately leads to liberation, to freedom from suffering.
That's the ultimate goal of the Upanishadic path.
So much of what we've been discussing revolves around this idea of Brahman, this ultimate reality that pervades everything.
It's the ground of being, the source of all existence.
It's a vast concept, but it feels like the Upanishads offer a roadmap to experiencing this reality directly.
They do.
Not just intellectually grasping it.
It's about direct experience, about feeling it in your heart.
That's what makes them so powerful.
Exactly. They're not just theoretical treatises. They're guides to awakening.
Okay, so as we continue to explore this roadmap,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with a question to ponder.
Okay, I'm listening.
If breath is intelligence, and intelligence is breath, as the Kasataki Upanishad states,
Interesting quote.
how does that resonate with your own experience of consciousness?
And the world around you.
It's a powerful question.
It is. It invites us to look at something as basic as breathing in a whole new light.
And perhaps through that exploration,
We can begin to grasp the profound wisdom embedded in these ancient texts.
that question about breath and intelligence, it's really stayed with me.
It's a powerful image, isn't it?
It is. Makes me think about the connection between our physical body and our conscious awareness.
It's a deep connection, one the Upanishads really encourage us to explore.
Yeah, they challenge us to look beyond the surface, don't they?
They do.
To see the interconnectedness of everything.
Of all things, including those things that seem separate, like matter and consciousness. It's all part of the same tapestry.
That interconnectedness is such a recurring theme for us.
Yes, we've seen it come up again and again.
We've talked about it in relation to the self, to Brahman.
Even to the cosmos as a whole.
And you mentioned earlier that the Upanishads offer all sorts of paths and practices to actually experience this interconnectedness, not just think about it.
They do. There are so many different approaches.
We've talked about meditation and pranayama and ethical living.
Right. We've covered a lot of ground.
But there's another powerful technique that they highlight: mantra repetition.
Ah, yes, the power of sound.
So we're talking about chanting or even mentally repeating these sacred sounds and phrases.
Exactly.
Like the syllable OM.
OM is a classic example, yeah.
OM is a classic example, yes.
But there are others, right?
There are many others specific to the Upanishads.
And each mantra carries its own unique vibration.
A specific energy that can awaken different parts of our consciousness.
So it's like using sound as a tool for inner transformation.
It is a very powerful tool.
I'm really intrigued by that idea. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Do the Upanishads give specific examples of mantras and their effects?
They do. They mention several.
Like what?
For example, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad talks about the mantra Asato Masad Gamaya,
Okay.
Tamaso Majutir Gamaya, Mertyurma Amritam Gamaya.
And that means?
Lead me from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality.
Wow.
It's a powerful invocation, a prayer for awakening.
For liberation from our limited perception.
Precisely. It's about aligning ourselves with the truth.
And the Upanishads suggest that chanting or meditating on these mantras
With sincerity and devotion.
can help us to purify our minds, connect us to higher realms of being, and ultimately realize our true nature as Brahman.
Exactly. It's a path to self-realization.
Okay, so we've got all these practices and teachings to consider.
There's a wealth of wisdom to explore.
Self-inquiry, ethical living, meditation, pranayama, mantra repetition.
This can be a bit overwhelming.
It is. I mean, where do we even begin?
That's a common question, and the Upanishads have an answer.
They do.
They emphasize the importance of finding a qualified teacher.
A guru.
A guru, yes, someone who can guide us on this path.
Right, like in those stories we talked about.
With students seeking wisdom from their masters.
Exactly. Those dialogues and relationships were so central to their understanding.
They were. And that tradition continues today.
So a guru can help us understand the teachings, tailor them to our individual needs.
And navigate the inevitable challenges we'll face on this journey.
It's like having a map and a compass when you're venturing into uncharted territory.
A good analogy.
Speaking of uncharted territory, I keep coming back to this idea of Brahman.
The ultimate reality.
Yes, this reality that's beyond our normal perception.
It's difficult to grasp with our limited minds.
The Upanishads offer all these practices to experience it directly, but what does that experience actually feel like?
That's the question, isn't it?
I mean, they use some pretty evocative language,
They do, trying to capture something that's ultimately beyond words.
like Sat Chidananda.
Ah, yes, being consciousness bliss,
Being, consciousness, bliss.
the three aspects of Brahman.
Being representing that fundamental reality.
The unchanging ground of existence.
Consciousness.
The pure awareness that pervades all things.
And bliss.
The unbounded joy that arises from realizing our true nature.
It sounds like a truly transformative experience.
It is a complete shift in perspective.
So it's not about escaping the world, but experiencing it in a new way.
Exactly, with a sense of unity and interconnectedness that goes beyond our ordinary perception.
And the Upanishads remind us that this isn't a solitary pursuit,
We're all in this together.
supported by the wisdom of the ages.
And the guidance of those who have walked the path before us.
You know, it strikes me that the Upanishads aren't just ancient texts.
They're living wisdom.
They offer practical wisdom that's still relevant today.
Perhaps even more so in our fast-paced, often chaotic world.
Exactly, and their insights into consciousness, into meditation, into the interconnectedness of all things.
They're timeless truths.
They can help us navigate life's challenges.
With greater clarity, purpose, and peace.
And they remind us that this journey of self-discovery isn't about seeking something outside ourselves.
But uncovering the truth that's already within us.
Beautifully said.
And as you continue to explore these teachings,
Yeah.
remember these words from the Katha Upanishad. The self is not to be attained by instruction, nor by intellectual power, nor even through much hearing. It is to be attained only by the one whom it chooses. To such a one, the self reveals its own true nature.
So it's not about forcing it, but creating the conditions for it to emerge.
Cultivating the soil of our hearts and minds so the seed of truth can blossom.
Exactly.
As you cultivate that inner landscape, may you find the wisdom, the courage, and the grace to awaken to the fullness of your own being.
Wow, this deep dive into the Upanishads has been incredible.
It has been a rich exploration.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
I hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
May the wisdom of the Upanishads guide you on your own journey of self-discovery.